There's no miniatures in this box. No variable player powers. You don't even do dice placement. There's no plastic even in this box. It looks like the map was drawn by a Columbian era cartographer. What? You don't have to use mahjong tiles to build a temple, or I found an old time Euro game in 2019. I just found an old time Euro game in 2019. Calimala. This is about as a Euro game as comes out anymore. Look at this, all this glory here, all these cubes and discs and abstraction. Fantastic. We're going to start off with a real quick tour around the board. First things first, let's take a look at the actual main board here. Up here at the top, we have a scoring track. That scoring track is basically going to trigger once we kick discs out of the actions area. And it's going to score those things in left to right from top to bottom order. So like just how we would read those tiles in the United States, or if we were reading English. So that's that. The way how those score, I'm not going to get into specific details, but I will say that everything that possibly can score in this game, it feels like scores. The number of trade houses you have, the number of contributions you made to each of these buildings, the number of contributions you've made to the cities for their fabric, their textile industry. All of that is going to, at some point in this game, score. So it just does generously score almost everything in this game. So you want to keep doing stuff. Every game I played of this too has been really tight in the scoring. So it's very well balanced because of maybe a couple of the mechanics in this game as well. So this is the scoring area. The second area we're going to look at here is the actions area. So I'm going to flip these over one at a time and we'll take a look at what they do. But when you basically flip these over, it randomizes. This is all randomized. This is all randomized. And then this is basically going to, as we put down discs in these circular spots, it's going to trigger a couple of actions every time you place there. So I guess before we even talk a little more about that, because there is a little more to it than what I just said, I think it would be really good for us to just kind of look at what these different action spaces could do in my randomized setup right here. All right, I'm going to flip these over one at a time and explain what they do. This is the textile space. Basically, each of your textile factories or producing buildings on your player boards, which we'll get to, produces a textile there. This one allows you to take a marble into your supply. Talk about that in a second. This one allows you to export fabrics via the ocean, via ships. This one simply just take a log into your supply. Contribute art to the works of to the buildings that are happening, that are being built in your town. Take a brick. Contribute via roads and wagons. Not contribute, but like sell your fabric or distribute your fabric. And then use that to improve your infrastructure and build something to make your player area better or your distribution network a little bit stronger. So when I place a disc on one of these, I'm going to get to do the actions above and below there or side to side there. And that's just kind of a cool way that you feel like you're getting a lot of stuff. And there's even more to it than that. So as we play the game, people are going to put their discs on the board. And we're going to keep going different places and getting the benefits of where we would place those discs. And what's going to happen is these areas aren't blocked once we place there. So I'm able to put another disc on top of that. And what's going to happen is I'm going to resolve my actions, and then the discs underneath mine are going to resolve as well. So when you place a disc, you're kind of making an investment and hoping that you pick an attractive spot that's going to trigger a few times. And so as the game keeps going, we keep doing that. And we would fill up all these areas probably over the course of the game. But what would happen is we can do, look, I'm at a stack of 3 now. So they would all trigger now. So red would get the benefits, blue would get the benefits, and then yellow would get the benefits. But then when we put another disc on there, so let's say yellow did that again, then we were going to kick that bottom yellow disc out. That's going to trigger that first scoring effect there. So we're going to score who contributed the most wood to the structures in the city in that particular scoring. So kind of an interesting deal there, that these discs and the disc placement is really kind of a core to what's kind of interesting in this game. There's one other disc action I do want to show you. We have neutral discs. So depending on the setup, you get your main colored discs, but then you also get a few neutral discs. The neutral discs are going to allow you to take double the actions that you would get normally. So I would take this twice and this twice with that placement, but then I'm never going to get to do it again. So I would get double the placements there, but then when people on successive turns put something there, since it's a neutral disc, I don't really own it. I don't get to get more benefits from it later. So it gives me a really good benefit up front, but not quite as many benefits over the course of the life of that disc. If a white disc were to get kicked out, so we're playing still and the white disc does get kicked out, then what would happen is the player who kicked the white disc out, so in this case yellow, would take that white disc into their supply and then put one of their yellow cubes or discs up there. So now yellow's really triggered scoring twice. That's important for us to know because tiebreakers on all of the scoring is based on, these are called like seats in the city council, or I don't remember the exact term, but basically their influence within the city. And so whoever has the most influence up here, including the works of art placed into this building, gets to win the tiebreakers. This middle space I haven't talked about yet. That's where I'm going to be able to take materials from my warehouse and contribute them to the grand buildings being built within our city, our home base. And there are 3 buildings that are still being built. A fourth one, the way I think about it thematically, is already built, but it needs some art placed into it. So all the buildings need art, but 3 of the buildings need building materials placed in there. The contributing art happens here. So it's a kind of similar action, but different. So when I'm able to contribute to one of the buildings there, I'm gonna take goods from my warehouse, which I haven't even mentioned that yet. We'll get to that here in a bit. But I would say let's take I was yellow player and I took a log out. I took that middle action. I'm able to contribute a log there. And throughout the game, we're going to keep contributing different kinds of materials to that building. All of us are. And red maybe really wants to score this one, so they've contributed a lot. And so when this building gets triggered in the scoring area, we just do basically area control majorities. And whoever has the most materials there is going to trigger the building to give them 3 points for first, 2 for second, 1 for third. But you have to be present there to get any points at all. The other thing that's going to happen too is when we get to the materials and types of materials that are going to score, whoever has the most of any type of materials is going to score a bunch of points too. So let's say yellow was smart about that, and they contributed a wood to each of these buildings. And when wood came up, they have 3 wood, while red has only 1 based on this row right here. So I have this row, 3 yellows, 1 red. I'm going to clear that off. That would be exclusively the wood row. So we'd score that. So we score the rows, the clusters. We don't score the columns, but we score them in several ways. We also score the art contributed, the amount of art contributed. So contributing art is a little different because we have to take marble and then we use our marble to place them into the art part of that. It's a different action space than the main one in the middle of the board. It's this one here on the side on this random setup. So you can contribute art as well. You also can contribute art over here, and that's going to help you to have influence inside the city, and it will help with tiebreakers as well. There's also more rules in the rulebook about how you can break further ties if there's ties within influence in the city. This game just really hates ties. So that's a lot of the board. We're not quite done yet, though, because we have this area to talk about yet. One thing I mentioned, too, is that when we take that build action, we can improve our infrastructure. One way we do that is we build trade houses in these towns. And so when we build trade houses in these towns, we're able to use that to basically wagon our fabrics up there. So as our fabrics are woven, the red player would, if they took that action, be able to put some fabric there later in the game, and then the red player would be able to do that. So that would be done. These would be a couple of different turns. I'm going to switch that up so you guys don't think it's, they aren't really related. They just give you the right to place there. Then the way how you actually place there is having created the textiles, and then on another turn yet, going ahead and taking that wagon action to wagon the materials up to the cities. And these are all going to score as well, with majorities again. So, I mean, just everything you do in this game feels like it gets you points. So let's go ahead and take a look at the player boards. So in a player's play area, they have just a bunch of cubes because you're going to be putting cubes out a lot throughout the game. You have some discs too, which indicate the number of actions you're going to take and how you're going to trigger things up there in the scoring area. But then you also have these 3 boats and these 3 trade houses. Well, I talked about trade houses a little. You build those into cities, but boats you just place down here. And that just shows that you have a boat that could deliver into a port city, which is indicated on the map by having a boat next to it and doesn't have room for trade houses. So that's one way you can improve your infrastructure. You also can build more of these textile factories, I guess is the best way I think of it. And then when you weave, you're going to build one in each factory. So if you had 3 factories, you're going to get three. Whereas if you didn't invest in that extra infrastructure, you'd only create 2 or 1. These down here are warehouses. So that's where we're going to, as we get those materials from the action selections out there, we're going to be able to put some cubes in there to indicate that we have those materials. And this keeps our area nice and tidy. The other thing I would like to mention too is that this right here is a really nice summary of basically what happens on each of those places. So again, you get those goods, you add cubes, you're able to do a build action, so it shows you the costs and the results. So you can build boats, trade houses, and then additional textile factories. Contribute art, get weave fabric, so basically get a fabric per each factory that you have. Use a boat to ship into port cities, use a wagon to ship into road landlocked type cities, and then contribute to the city in order to gain those majorities and gain more influence and power within the city. So we're going to keep doing that until either we run out of these player discs or until we've triggered all of the scoring possibilities in the scoring area there. So in a game, we'd also have a public card that is a in-game scoring. This one would be public. We'd all know that we're going to score this building one last time for 5, 3, and 1 points. Then I also was given some secret objectives, and I chose one of those. I'll reveal that at the end, and we all score these, but I knew that we were also going to score that building one last time. There's also cards in there that indicate that we would score different cities again. Action cards are something that we haven't mentioned at all. So when we take an action in the action placement area, when we're putting those discs down, if we are not able to take an action, so it's not that we're passing, saying we don't want to take an action, but we can't take an action because, let's say we're trying to contribute art, but we couldn't contribute art. Then we have a stack of these action cards. I would take one of these into my hand, and then I can use this on a later turn. So this card would be for me to have in my hand of cards, and then on a later turn, I could play this either before putting a disc down or after putting a disc down. I could say I'm going to weave fabric because it's an extra action, kind of saved over from another turn. That really makes this game stay super tight and super close because I think all the actions in this game are really balanced, and everyone, because of that action saving mechanism, is going to get the same number of actions. So it really is a pretty dry, pretty clean, pretty neat Euro. And I don't mean dry in a bad way. I think a lot of us, myself included, enjoy these dry Euro games. But I think we need to probably get back into the studio now where I can give you some more final thoughts on what I think about this. All right, so that's an overview of Calimala. Not quite a rules explanation, but hopefully enough that you guys kind of can follow where I'm going with this stuff and understand what I mean when I'm talking about different things that happen in this game. So Calimala is a really cool game, and it's not new, it's not niche, it's not cutting edge. It's just a good old school Euro game, and I've been missing those. So this one pretty well delivers on that. Let's get right into it, though. Let's break this down a little bit, and then I'm going to give you some final number rankings on this and see if it's for you. So the player count thing is a plus and a negative on that. 3 to 5 players. The thing about that that's a positive is that you can play this game with 5 players, and the play time is going to be pretty similar to a 3 because it's a number of actions. There's a set number of actions over this game, and so you might not get as many actions when you play this with 5 players, but you're going to still feel a rich gameplay, and it almost at 5 players feels like it leaves you wanting a little more. It gets kind of crazy on the board, but it's pretty good at 5. And at 3, it's still really solid, but it's like you feel like maybe you're doing a lot of stuff, and really it doesn't leave you like that, like I didn't quite accomplish everything I wanted to, which a good Euro game we all know kind of does. So the 3 to 5 players, the positive of that is that the playtime kind of stays the same, and it does seat 5 players really well. So that's a huge positive for a Euro game like this. The negative is that you have to have 3. Now, there is a 2-player variant on Board Game Geek that the designer himself put up there. I have not played that personally, but there are some really positive comments about that, about how you can use some of the white discs to kind of simulate another player, I think. But there's a variant up there on BGG. So if you only play with 2 players, I don't know if this would be 100% for you. But if you get 3 to 5 player groups fairly often and maybe occasionally play it 2, this might be okay still. But it is a 3-player cutoff out of the box here. So that's a little bit of a negative. It's got a really approachable complexity. It's not too hard of a game. This is a Euro game for sure. It's a really like a worker placement meets kind of area control. So it has both those kind of ideas there pretty present. So you'd need to probably have people who have played at least a worker placement game or some kind of game like that in order to really fully get them involved in this game and have them understand things really quickly. So, but that said, it's not super complex. So this might be a good next steps type game. Something you'd play after like a real like light, like Little Town or maybe the River kind of worker placement game. And then it would really kind of introduce area control. So if you've had people play maybe Royals or something, you could really kind of get that whole area control thing figured out with this game, combined with those other things. So I think it's a really satisfying game for more experienced gamers, but I think it's a next steps kind of thing for people you're taking from being family gamers to like more of the Euro gamer type gamers. So it's a good approachable complexity. The components in it are really strong. I like the cards. They're well done. The cubes, the houses, it just feels like an old Euro game. I mean, I really love old Aaliyah bookshelf series games. I really love just all that era, Prince of Florence, Genoa, Goa kind of stuff. And this game really feels like that with these components, especially these wooden components in there. Really strong components, though. The cards are great. The cardboard's thick. The player boards are thick. The board is great. And I know that sometimes people want to criticize Stronghold for not having the most amazing components. Really, I think that comes from one game, and that wasn't even them producing those components. They just kind of distributed that game. So this one, though, is really great. I think everything in the box, component-wise, is really strong. There is decent player interaction for it being a Euro game like this. So sometimes when you play these Euro games like this, they're basically solitaire. You're playing, maximizing your turn, and at the end, the player interaction exists in the form of who scored the most points. Well, in this one, you really are kind of interacting with other players. You're kind of deciding which players you want to benefit with getting those extra actions by placing those discs. You really are trying to get area control done. So the interaction between players on this is pretty high. It's not necessarily conflict, but it is definitely there's definitely interaction for sure. And there are definitely times where this game can be maybe a little mean even. So a lot of player interaction though, which is strong. The consistent playtime I talked about already. There's a number of actions in this game, not necessarily a number of rounds per player or things like that. So I think the play times in this game are going to be pretty consistent. I think we're looking at probably somewhere between, I don't know, maybe an hour to hour and a half. Once you get this game figured out, you'll be able to play it in an hour without too much difficulty, about any player count, I think. So pretty consistent play times, which is really nice. You know what you're getting. It lacks theme, but you know what? Like that's to be kind of like expected. This is an old-fashioned Euro game. It's not a thematic game. And so the really rock-solid, good gameplay on this is really more than enough for me to want to say it's a good game. So the theme of I'm producing these cloth things and then distributing them, but also contributing to the building of this city. I mean, there's a whole narrative in the rulebook about why this makes sense historically, but does it play out on the board? No, not necessarily. It's pretty abstracted, but that's okay to me. I don't mind that. If you're somebody who needs a theme and needs something to be thematic, maybe look hard at not getting this one. Maybe you'll give it a pretty strong look before, if you don't think a theme, if you think a theme is really something you need to get immersed into a game. If you just like rock solid gameplay and you don't necessarily care about a theme, which a lot of us Euro gamers are there, this one's fine. I don't think that there's really needs to be a theme on it. It's just good mechanics. So where do I put this at with some numbers? The accessibility in this game, I'm going to give this the next steps like kind of thing. That means that, maybe not quite Gateway, but that next step after Gateway. So this is something that I would play after getting some family games out of the way with maybe that gaming group, but maybe some inexperienced gamers in there. The theme, anybody will play this game. The theme's not even present, really. I said that, but I can't see anyone being upset about the cloth trade in the Mediterranean over, I don't know what century this happened, the 16th century maybe, I don't know. I can't see anybody objecting to that. The fun of this, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5. It's a pretty fun game. I like those old Euro games, though, so fun's a subjective term. I had fun playing it. I think if you like Euro games, you're going to have fun, too. If you like something like El Grande, or if you like something like, I don't know, maybe Puerto Rico or Stone Age even, like some of those older like worker placement kind of feeling games or area control type games, you're going to like this one, too, I think. It just does. It feels like a throwback. It really does to when I loved games that did what this game does. So I had fun. That's a positive thing. I'm trying to compliment the game. I don't know if it came across that way, but that's definitely what I'm trying to do there. The replayability of this game is a 5 out of 5. I've actually read some of the like designers kind of like journals or his comments on this. It sounds like to me he made this game to be something that you take what is given to you and you make do with it. That a new strategy is going to be required every time you play this game. And that's for sure. So one time when I played this game, you could go to a space that allowed you to collect marble and contribute art in the same spot. that spot was very popular. And a couple people had a strategy of, I'm just going to contribute a ton of art. And those art spots filled up very quickly. I've played other games where it really made sense to get cloth and distribute it to the cities because there was a weave action, and on one side of it was the boat action, on the other side was the card action. So you could weave your cloth and then send it out. I've seen other games where like basically all the connected to the centers are the different materials. So it made sense to contribute materials. There's a lot of different ways to score points in this game. So every time that it comes out, it's set up a little differently, and it's almost like an infinitely different setup every time. And then the way how things score in different orders too makes it different as well. So it's like what is easy to get points, what's hard to get points, what order am I going to get the most points in? All that stuff really is really cool. And then if that's not enough, you throw in a secret card that you're going to have that's your objective kind of in there too. So just the replayability in this, if I could give it a 6, I would. It's just super replayable. I don't think you'll play this game twice and go, oh, this reminds me of the last time I played it, because it just doesn't happen. It's not this game. The rules are simple enough and feel the same, but like it just feels very different. The design and the art, I mean, it's a Euro game. I mean, it doesn't have anything over the top in it. It doesn't have anything that's fantastic as far as the presentation of the art and stuff goes in this game, but it's perfectly fine. My complaint on this is there's a few places where it's like they could have made some more clean decisions on how they could have laid the board out, and it would have made the game easier perhaps. So one thing, for example, that scoring area, it would make more sense to me to maybe squash those buildings and run them all the way across the top of the board, and then run that scoring track all the way across the board too. And that would be like more intuitive to players, that we're just going to go from left to right across this one line, 15 squares. Just little simple things like that kind of would make it have more sense. Some of the iconography doesn't quite make sense. So it's like they almost need like on one action, it's you're shipping your cloth, but then also later when you score it, it's like who has the most boats built, and we use the same icon kind of thing. So some of the iconography in this is a little not awesome, and then the board layout could be better. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. That's the weakest part of it. It's very much usable, very much good. Overall, very positive. Matches that old-time Euro kind of feel. It really does organize all the things. It makes a lot of sense overall, but there's a couple tweaks that I would have made to it that make it have not a great rating on it. It's still above average, 3 out of 5. Better than just functional. It's good. So the cards are great too, the quality on them and everything like that. So very good, just not outstanding, I would say. And then finally, where am I going to put this at an overall rating of 4 out of 5, which makes this a board game mechanics accepted game. And I'm giving this the unique Euro designation. This game is a Euro game. It feels like a Euro game, a very true Euro game, but it's unique. I've not played a game quite like this one. I really do like it. I like how that disc mechanic works in there. It doesn't remind me of anything else I've really ever played. And it might be present in an old Euro game, but it feels like an old Euro game kind of thing. That getting your goods and your things back from worker placement from where each side of where you place that, I've seen that in things like Spirium, games like that, but it feels good how it works in here. Trying to get area majorities on these little grid spaces, that feels really cool too. It makes things feel really neat and tidy. The way how things score when you kick those discs out and they score in a certain order, that feels different too. So it's very unique. It's a unique Euro with basically a big overall core mechanic of worker placement and area control. So I do like it. It's a little different. If you're into dry Euros and you like stuff that's going to make you think, but maybe not let you play pretend too much, this is a great game for you. If you like a lot of theme and you like a lot of interaction combat-wise, or you like luck in your games, dice, stuff like that, this is probably not for you. But I would suggest this to anybody who really loves a good Euro game, a good throwback Euro game in particular. So I've been Joel with the Board Game Mechanics, and these were my thoughts. Before I let you go, though, maybe you think about subbing. Check out the link in the description below. That'll get you to our podcast where we talk about stuff like this all the time. We are Euro gamers, Jason and I. So if you are looking for a Euro game podcast where they talk about Euro games, they, meaning me and Jason, but it's not extremely excruciatingly heavy games all the time, but mostly focused on those Euro games, maybe check our podcast out. We get kind of goofy and zany sometimes too, so we have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, I've been Joel with the Board Game Mechanics, and keep gaming.